The power went out at exactly 3 in the morning, and I woke up to the sound of my backup generator refusing to start in the garage below my bedroom. I'm Greg Emerson, and I live in the Meadowbrook Heights community just outside of Richmond, Virginia. It's one of those planned neighborhoods where every house looks vaguely similar, and the HOA has more rules than the actual state government. But the location is perfect for my work as a mobile equipment technician for Richmond County Hospital, and the mortgage was reasonable, so I've dealt with the constant nitpicking for the past 4 years. That particular October night, Hurricane Melissa had veered inland after battering the coast, bringing with her torrential rain and wind gusts that knocked out power across 3 counties. I threw on jeans and a hoodie, grabbed my flashlight, and headed down to the garage. The generator was an industrial model, much larger than the portable units most homeowners use. It had to be. This wasn't just for keeping my lights on. The machine hummed to life on my second attempt, and I spent the next 20 minutes connecting the proper feeds and making sure everything was running smoothly. The specialized medical refrigerator in my garage required constant power. Inside were temperature-sensitive medications and blood samples that I transported to remote clinics twice a week as part of the hospital's outreach program. The generator, the refrigerator, and even my vehicle were all registered to Richmond County Hospital. I was essentially running a satellite medical depot from my home, something the hospital's administration had approved and the county had licensed. By 4 in the morning, I was back in bed, listening to the steady thrum of the generator cutting through the storm sounds. I'd deal with the HOA complaint that would inevitably come later. There was always a complaint. I woke up at 7 to silence, not just the absence of the generator's noise, but an unsettling quiet that made my stomach drop. I ran to the window and looked down at the driveway. The garage door was open, and the generator was gone. My phone had enough battery to make calls. I dialed the non-emergency police line first, then my supervisor at the hospital, then started checking my security camera footage. The cameras ran on battery backup, thank God, and what I saw made my blood boil. At 5:30 in the morning, a white SUV had pulled into my driveway. A woman in a rain jacket had gotten out, accompanied by 2 men in reflective vests. They'd spent 15 minutes disconnecting my generator, loaded it onto a trailer behind the SUV, and drove off. The license plate was partially visible in one frame. I recognized the SUV. It belonged to Patricia Brennan, the HOA president. My doorbell rang at 7:45. I was already dressed and furious, my phone in hand with the security footage queued up. Patricia stood on my porch, somehow managing to look pristine despite the storm damage visible on every lawn in the neighborhood. She was 52, with that specific haircut that seemed to be issued with HOA board membership, and she held a clipboard like it was a royal scepter. "Mr. Emerson, I wanted to inform you personally that the association has confiscated your generator," she said before I could even speak. "You violated Ordinance 14-6, which explicitly prohibits the operation of combustion generators within community boundaries. You stole my property," I said, keeping my voice level. "That's theft." She smiled in that condescending way that made me want to slam the door in her face. "It's confiscation of prohibited equipment. You'll receive formal notification within 3 business days. The generator is being held at the community storage facility. You may reclaim it after paying the fine of $1,500 and signing an agreement that you will not operate it within community limits again." "That generator is registered to Richmond County Hospital," I said. "It's not even technically mine. It's medical equipment." Patricia's smile didn't waver. Your personal business arrangements don't supersede HOA regulations. Every homeowner signed the covenant. You signed the covenant. There's a hurricane. People don't have power, which is precisely why we can't have generators running. The noise disturbs other residents, and the fire hazard during severe weather is unacceptable. Get off my property, I said, and you're going to return that generator today, or I'm pressing charges. Have a good day, Mr. Emerson. She turned and walked back to her SUV, which was now parked on the street. I noticed the trailer was gone. I called the police again. This time I asked for an officer to come out. Then I called my supervisor, Tom Richardson, who answered on the second ring despite it being a Sunday morning. They took it. Tom's voice rose half an octave. Greg, that's hospital property. That's registered equipment. Do they have any idea what they've done? I don't think she cares, I said. Can you contact your people? This needs to come from the hospital administration, not just from me. I'm calling Linda right now. She's going to lose her mind. Linda Chen was the hospital's director of operations, and she didn't tolerate anything that interfered with patient care. A Richmond police officer arrived within the hour. Officer Davis was young, methodical, and he took notes while I showed him the security footage and explained the situation. When I showed him the registration documents for the generator, his eyebrows went up. So this is county property, he said. Technically, yes. It's assigned to me because I run a licensed medical depot from my home. Everything's legal and permitted at the county and state level. But your HOA doesn't allow generators. They don't allow recreational generators, I corrected. There's nothing in the covenant about medical equipment or county-registered property. I've read that document cover to cover. Officer Davis made more notes. I can file a theft report, but this is going to get complicated with the HOA involvement. They'll claim they had authorization under your community rules. They didn't. And even if they did, you can't just take county hospital property. He nodded. Let me talk to my sergeant. This might need to go up the chain. In the meantime, I'd recommend you get a lawyer. HOA disputes can get messy. After Officer Davis left, I spent an hour documenting everything. Photos of the empty space in the garage, printouts of the registration documents, copies of the security footage. My phone rang constantly. Tom called back to say Linda was contacting the county attorney's office. My neighbor, Marcus, texted to ask if I was okay after seeing the police car. The hospital's legal department left a voicemail. By noon, the power was still out across the neighborhood, and my medical refrigerator had been without generator backup for 7 hours. I'd managed to get my truck running and had loaded the refrigerator's contents into portable coolers with ice packs. It was a temporary solution at best, and I needed to get everything to the hospital within the next few hours. I drove to the community storage facility, a large shed behind the neighborhood's tennis courts. The lock was substantial, and there was no one around. I could hear generators running from several nearby houses. Apparently, Patricia's concern about generator noise was selective. My phone rang. Linda Chen's number. Greg, I need you to listen carefully, she said. Her voice was tight with controlled anger. I've spoken with the county attorney. What your HOA president did was not just theft, it's interference with medical services. That generator powers equipment that supports patient care. The medications in your depot refrigerator are assigned to 3 different patients who need them this week. I've got everything on ice right now, I said, but I need to get it to the hospital today. Bring it all in. We're documenting everything for the legal case. The county is sending a formal demand letter to your HOA for immediate return of the generator. If they don't comply by end of business tomorrow, we're involving the state attorney's office. They've got it locked in a storage shed. I'm here now, but I can't get in. Don't try. Let the legal process work. But Greg, I need you to understand something. This is serious. We're not talking about HOA fine disputes. They've confiscated county medical equipment during an emergency. If any patient suffers because of this, there will be criminal charges. The weight of that settled in my stomach. The medications in my refrigerator are stable for 48 hours with proper cooling, I said. We're not at crisis point yet. Yet, Linda repeated. Get everything to the hospital. I'll have Tom meet you at receiving. I spent the afternoon at the hospital, transferring everything from my coolers back into proper storage and filling out incident reports. Tom had already filed paperwork with 3 different departments. The hospital's head of security, a former state trooper named Dale Morrison, wanted to review my security footage personally. This woman just walked up and took it, Dale asked, watching the footage for the 3rd time. She had 2 guys with her. I don't know who they were. Doesn't matter. They removed county property without authorization. He paused the video on a frame that showed Patricia's face clearly. I'm sending this to RPD. They're going to want to follow up. Officer Davis already filed a report this morning. Yeah, but that was before the hospital got involved. This is different now. You're not just a homeowner in a dispute with your HOA. You're a county contractor and they stole county medical equipment. Dale forwarded the video to his email. This is going to get bigger before it gets smaller. I drove home as the sun was setting. The power was still out. I had a small portable battery station that could keep my phone and a few lights running, but the house was getting cold. October in Virginia isn't brutal, but nighttime temperatures were dropping into the 40s. More than a dozen of my neighbors had generators running. I could hear them from my driveway. Nobody had confiscated theirs. Marcus came over around 8 with warm food and a camping lantern. He lived 3 houses down with his wife and 2 kids, and they'd been running their generator since the storm hit. I heard what happened, he said, setting up the lantern on my kitchen table. Patricia's been bragging about it on the HOA Facebook group. Are you serious? He pulled out his phone and showed me. Patricia had posted a long message about how she'd taken action to remove a noise and safety violation, and praising herself for protecting the community during a crisis. The comments were mixed. Some people thanked her. Others pointed out that plenty of people were running generators. One person asked specifically about mine, noting that I'd helped jumpstart their car last month and seemed like a good guy. Patricia had responded. Mr. Emerson was running an industrial generator that violated multiple safety codes. This was not a typical residential backup unit. She doesn't even know what she took, I said. Half the board is in her pocket, Marcus said, but there are a few members who think she goes too far. Jerry Walton posted on Nextdoor asking for your side of the story. I spent an hour writing a careful response explaining the situation without getting into legal details. I mentioned that the generator was registered county hospital property, that it powered medical equipment, and that the hospital's legal team was now involved. I kept it factual and calm, even though I wanted to let my anger show. The post went up at 9. By 10, it had 40 comments. By 11, over 100. The neighborhood was divided. Some people defended Patricia's right to enforce HOA rules. Others were appalled that she'd taken hospital equipment. A few people admitted they hadn't realized I was running a medical depot from my home and wanted to know more about how that worked. I answered questions where appropriate and ignored the inflammatory comments. Around midnight, the HOA's official account posted a statement saying that all confiscations are conducted in accordance with community guidelines, and that personal business ventures conducted from residences must still comply with HOA regulations. That made me laugh. Personal business ventures. As if I was running a side hustle instead of providing county medical services. I fell asleep on my couch under 2 blankets, my phone buzzing with notifications, until I finally turned it to silent mode. Monday morning brought sunshine and still no power. I had to drive to a Starbucks 3 miles away to charge my devices and get coffee. While I was there, Tom called. The county attorney sent the demand letter an hour ago, he said. Patricia Brennan has until 5 p.m. today to return the generator or face legal action. What kind of legal action? Criminal charges for theft of county property, interference with medical services, and potentially more depending on how the state attorney's office views it. Linda's not messing around. She's also filing a complaint with the state medical board because this disrupted patient care pathways. I sipped my coffee, watching the morning commuters file in. This is going to destroy her. She stole hospital equipment during a hurricane, Tom said flatly. She destroyed herself. We're just documenting the consequences. The power came back on at my house around 11. I drove home immediately to check that everything was functioning properly. The medical refrigerator had been offline for over 30 hours. Even with my emergency protocols, this was the longest disruption we'd ever had. I was in the garage running diagnostics when Patricia's SUV pulled into my driveway. She got out carrying a folder and walked up like she owned the place. I stepped out to meet her, blocking the garage entrance. I received a letter from some county attorney, she said, her voice dripping with irritation. This is absurd. You're trying to use your employer to bully the HOA. You stole hospital property, I said. Return the generator. It's not stolen. It's confiscated. There's a difference. Not according to the law. Return it by 5 p.m. or you're going to be arrested. Her expression tightened. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you what the county attorney told my supervisor. You took county property without authorization. That's theft. The hospital wants it back. Now. I enforced HOA regulations that you agreed to when you purchased your home. Show me where the covenant prohibits medical equipment, I said. Show me where it prohibits county-registered property. Show me where it gives you the right to enter my property and remove anything without notice. She opened her folder and pulled out a highlighted document. Section 14, subsection 6. No combustion-based generators may be operated within community boundaries. That section refers to recreational generators and construction equipment. It specifically exempts emergency medical and safety equipment. It's in subsection 8, which you apparently didn't read. Her face flushed. I've been on this board for 12 years. I know the covenant. Then you know you screwed up. Return the generator. She spun around and marched back to her SUV. Before she got in, she turned back. This isn't over, Mr. Emerson. You've violated the spirit of our community standards, even if you think you found some technicality. The board will be reviewing your status as a homeowner. Looking forward to it, I called back. Make sure to bring your lawyer. She drove off, and I went back inside to call Tom. He needed to know that Patricia was doubling down instead of backing off. By 3 p.m., I'd heard nothing more from the HOA. The county attorney's office called to confirm that I hadn't received the generator back. I walked them through the timeline, including Patricia's visit to my house and her refusal to return the equipment. We're prepared to move forward with filing charges, the attorney said. His name was Robert Friedman, and he'd handled county property cases for 15 years. But I want to give her until the deadline. Some people need to see the consequences are real before they take action. She thinks she's in the right, I said. She's not going to back down easily. Then she's going to learn an expensive lesson about the difference between HOA authority and actual law. At 4:45, Patricia called my cell phone. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "The board has agreed to return your generator," she said stiffly. "You can pick it up at the storage facility at 6 p.m. Bring your identification." "It will be delivered back to my garage," I said. "You took it from my property. You return it to my property, same way you removed it." "That's not how this works." "Yeah, it is. You've got 15 minutes to get it back to my house or the county is filing charges. Your choice." She hung up without responding. At 5:15, the same trailer pulled into my driveway. The two men in reflective vests were back, and they unloaded my generator without making eye contact. It took them 20 minutes to get it back into the garage. Patricia's SUV idled on the street, but she didn't get out. I inspected the generator carefully. There were some new scratches and a dent on one corner, but it started up fine when I tested it. I'd document the damage for the hospital's insurance claim later. The men finished and left without saying a word. Patricia's SUV pulled away as soon as the trailer was hitched up. I called Robert Friedman. "They returned it." "Good. That removes the immediate theft charge, but the hospital can still pursue civil damages for the disruption of medical services and the damage to the equipment. That's up to the hospital's administration." "What about criminal charges?" "Interference with medical services is still on the table. So is trespassing, depending on how aggressive the hospital wants to be. I'll be speaking with their legal team tomorrow." I spent the evening reconnecting the generator properly and documenting everything. I took photos of every scratch, every dent, every connection point. I wrote up a detailed timeline of the entire incident. If this was going to court, I wanted documentation that left no room for doubt. The HOA Facebook group was on fire. Someone had apparently seen the generator being returned and posted about it. Patricia had responded with a message saying that the board had agreed to return the equipment as a courtesy, and that Mr. Emerson had agreed to comply with all future HOA regulations regarding noise and safety. I hadn't agreed to anything, and I posted to clarify that. Within minutes, the argument started up again. Jerry Walton, one of the board members Marcus had mentioned, posted a separate message calling for a special board meeting to review what had happened. He pointed out that confiscating property without proper notice or due process violated the HOA's own procedures, regardless of whether the generator itself was permitted. Patricia responded by saying the executive board had the authority to act immediately in emergency situations. Jerry countered that hurricane preparedness wasn't the kind of emergency that justified property seizure. I watched the argument unfold with a strange mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. This neighborhood drama was spiraling into something much larger, and I wasn't sure where it would end. Tuesday morning, Linda Chen called me at 7 a.m. "The hospital board met last night," she said. "We're moving forward with a civil lawsuit against the HOA and Patricia Brennan personally. We're also filing a formal complaint with the state about interference with licensed medical services." "That seems aggressive," I said. "Greg, do you understand what could have happened? You had patient medications that needed specific temperature control. If those had been compromised, people could have died. We can't let HOA busybodies think they can interfere with medical infrastructure just because they don't like noise. I get it. It just feels like this is getting out of control." It got out of control the moment she decided county hospital property was hers to confiscate. We're not backing down. The county attorney is also pursuing criminal charges for interference with governmental operations. That afternoon, I got a certified letter from the HOA's legal team. It informed me that I was being fined $5,000 for unauthorized business operations conducted from my residence, and that I had 30 days to cease all medical depot activities or face foreclosure proceedings on my home. I forwarded it immediately to Robert Friedman and Linda Chen. Within an hour, Robert had fired back a response explaining that my medical depot was fully licensed by the county and state, that it was exempt from HOA business restrictions under Virginia state law, and that any attempt to foreclose would be met with immediate legal action and a countersuit for harassment. The HOA's lawyer responded by claiming that state law didn't supersede private covenant agreements. Robert's next letter cited 3 Virginia Supreme Court cases where state-licensed medical activities had been found exempt from HOA restrictions. He added that if the HOA wanted to test this in court, the county was prepared to file for injunctive relief and seek damages for the HOA's attempt to disrupt medical services. I spent Wednesday watching legal documents fly back and forth via email. It was like watching lawyers play tennis, except every serve had the potential to bankrupt someone. The neighborhood was splitting into factions. A group of homeowners had started a petition demanding Patricia's resignation. Another group was defending her, claiming I was using my hospital connections to bully the HOA. The next-door arguments had gotten so heated that moderators locked several threads. Thursday morning brought the next escalation. 2 investigators from the Virginia Department of Health showed up at my house to inspect my medical depot. They were polite but thorough, checking every piece of equipment, every license, every temperature log. After 2 hours, they confirmed that everything was properly maintained and that I was in full compliance with all state regulations. "Has there been a complaint?" I asked. The lead investigator, a woman named Dr. Sarah Kemper, nodded. "Your HOA filed a complaint claiming you were operating an unlicensed medical facility from a residential property. We're required to investigate. And you're fine. More than fine, actually. Your documentation is better than some licensed clinics I've inspected." She handed me a copy of her report. "This will be on file with the state. If your HOA tries to claim you're violating health codes, this report contradicts that." "They're not going to stop," I said. "Probably not," she agreed. "But you've got the law on your side. Sometimes that's enough." Friday afternoon, I was served with a lawsuit. The HOA was suing me for violating the community covenant, seeking an injunction against my medical depot operations and damages of $25,000 for diminishment of community standards and property values. I called Robert Friedman, who laughed when I read him the complaint. "They're suing you for running a legal, licensed medical service," he said. "This is going to be fun. Forward me everything. I'll get this moved to federal court since it involves interference with state-licensed medical operations. Once it's federal, they're going to wish they'd never filed." "Why federal?" "Because federal courts don't have patience for HOAs trying to override state medical licensing. And because the hospital can intervene as an interested party, which brings county resources into your defense. Your HOA just picked a fight with the entire county health system." The weekend was quiet by comparison. I caught up on work, transported medications to 2 remote clinics, and tried to pretend my life wasn't being consumed by legal warfare. Monday brought a development I hadn't expected. Patricia Brennan was arrested. I found out from Marcus, who called me at 6 in the morning. Turn on the news. Channel 12. I fumbled for my remote and found the local news station. The anchor was reading a story about HOA overreach, and they had footage of Patricia being led from her house in handcuffs. The scroll at the bottom of the screen read, HOA president arrested for theft of county medical equipment. The reporter explained that the Commonwealth's attorney had filed criminal charges, including grand larceny, interference with governmental operations, and reckless endangerment. The reporter noted that the generator powered equipment containing medications for patients with serious conditions, and that the theft could have resulted in patient harm. My phone started ringing. Tom, Linda, Robert, my parents, neighbors, reporters. I ignored most of them and called Robert. They actually arrested her, I said. The Commonwealth's attorney doesn't mess around with theft of government property, Robert said. Plus, the hospital made a compelling case that her actions endangered patients. The state medical board added weight to that. She's looking at felony charges. This seems extreme. Greg, she stole a generator registered to a county hospital during a natural disaster. She kept it locked up while patients' medications were at risk. She then tried to extort you for its return by demanding money. And when she finally gave it back, she doubled down by suing you and trying to shut down your medical depot. None of that is normal HOA behavior. That's criminal behavior. I spent the rest of the day dodging reporters and watching the story spread across social media. By evening, it had been picked up by national news outlets. The narrative was irresistible. Tyrannical HOA president steals hospital equipment, gets arrested. Think pieces about HOA overreach started popping up everywhere. The HOA held an emergency board meeting Tuesday night. I attended via Zoom, since the meeting was required to be accessible to all homeowners. Jerry Walton had successfully called for Patricia's removal as president pending the outcome of the criminal case. The vote was 7-2 in favor. Patricia's two defenders were older women who had served on the board with her for years, but even they seemed shaken by the arrest. The board appointed Jerry as interim president. His first action was to formally withdraw the lawsuit against me and issue a public apology for the generator confiscation. His second action was to propose a review of all HOA enforcement procedures to prevent similar incidents. The Commonwealth's attorney's case moved faster than I expected. Patricia's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecution wasn't interested in reducing the charges. The case went to trial in January. I testified on the second day. The prosecutor walked me through the entire timeline: the storm, the generator, the confiscation, the return. I explained the medical equipment, the patient medications, the county registration. I showed the security footage. I presented the damage documentation. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that she'd been acting in her capacity as HOA president to enforce legitimate community rules. The prosecutor countered with the state medical licensing exemptions and the fact that Patricia had no legal authority to confiscate county property under any circumstances. The trial lasted a week. The jury deliberated for 6 hours and came back with guilty verdicts on all charges except reckless endangerment. The judge scheduled sentencing for March. In March, Patricia stood before the judge and tried to apologize. She said she'd been trying to protect the community, that she'd made a mistake, that she'd never intended to endanger anyone. The judge wasn't sympathetic. "Mrs. Brennan, you held a position of trust in your community," the judge said. "You abused that position to take property that didn't belong to you or even to Mr. Emerson. You took property belonging to a county hospital. You kept it locked away while medications intended for vulnerable patients sat without proper power. And when you were informed of the seriousness of your actions, you doubled down and attempted to use legal intimidation to justify your theft." She sentenced Patricia to 18 months in prison, suspended to 6 months with 3 years of probation. She also ordered restitution to the hospital for damages and my legal fees. The restitution amount was $47,000. Patricia's husband, a quiet man I'd seen around the neighborhood but never spoken to, looked devastated. Their adult daughter cried in the back of the courtroom. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The civil case settled in April. The hospital's lawsuit against the HOA resulted in a payment of $85,000 and a formal agreement that the HOA would never interfere with state-licensed medical operations conducted from any residence in the community. The HOA's insurance covered most of it, but the association had to levy a special assessment on all homeowners to cover the deductible and legal fees. That didn't make me popular with some neighbors, but Marcus and several others went out of their way to make sure people understood that this was Patricia's fault, not mine. A few people even thanked me for standing up to HOA overreach. One older woman told me she'd been living in fear of the HOA for years and was glad someone had finally challenged their authority. Jerry Walton was elected permanent HOA president in May with 78% of the vote. His platform was simple: reasonable enforcement of reasonable rules with respect for homeowners' rights and state law. The board was restructured to limit the president's unilateral authority, and a new dispute resolution process was put in place to prevent future conflicts from escalating. I kept running my medical depot. The hospital upgraded my generator to a newer, quieter model and installed additional security measures. I never had another problem with the HOA. Patricia served her 6 months at a minimum security facility and was released in October, exactly 1 year after the generator incident. She and her husband sold their house and moved out of state. I heard through the neighborhood gossip network that they'd relocated to Arizona to be near their daughter. Her 2 closest allies on the old board also sold their homes within the next year. The neighborhood's culture shifted noticeably. People were still concerned about property values and community standards, but there was less fear and more cooperation. The Facebook group arguments decreased. The next-door complaints became more reasonable. I ran into Jerry at the grocery store in December, more than a year after everything had happened. We chatted for a few minutes about the neighborhood, the upcoming holidays, how much quieter the board meetings had become. "You know, I owe you an apology," Jerry said as we were wrapping up. A bunch of us on the board knew Patricia was overstepping, but nobody wanted to be the one to challenge her. "You forced us to deal with it." "I just wanted my generator back," I said. He laughed. "Yeah, but it became about more than that. Sometimes somebody has to stand up and say, no, this isn't right. You did that. Changed the whole neighborhood dynamic." I thought about that on the drive home. I hadn't set out to change anything. I'd just been trying to do my job and protect the medical equipment I was responsible for. But Jerry was right in a way. Patricia had operated unchecked for so long because nobody challenged her. She'd gotten used to having total authority, and when someone finally said no, the whole structure of her power collapsed. The medical depot kept running smoothly. I transported medications, picked up samples, supported the hospital's outreach programs to rural clinics. It was meaningful work that helped people who might not otherwise have consistent access to care. Every time I drove out to one of the remote clinics and handed over a cooler of medications, I thought about how Patricia's theft could have disrupted that chain of care. In February of the following year, I got a letter from the Virginia Department of Health. They were recognizing my depot as a model program and wanted to feature it in a case study about innovative rural healthcare delivery. The write-up mentioned the generator incident only briefly. noting that I had successfully defended the program against local interference, and that the program's resilience in the face of challenges demonstrated its importance to the community. The hospital held a small reception to celebrate the recognition. Linda Chen gave a speech about the importance of satellite medical services and how the hospital was planning to expand the program to other residential depots in underserved areas. Tom presented me with a plaque. Dale Morrison made jokes about my brief fame as the guy who took down an HOA Karen. "Seriously, though," Dale said after the formal program ended, "you handled that whole situation perfectly. You documented everything, you stayed calm, you let the legal process work. A lot of people would have lost their temper or done something stupid. You just methodically built a case and let the facts speak for themselves." "I was pretty angry," I admitted. "Sure, but you channeled it productively." "That's the difference between getting your generator back and ending up arrested yourself for doing something dumb." He was right. There had been moments when I'd wanted to just break into that storage shed and take my generator back. Moments when I'd wanted to confront Patricia more aggressively. But letting the proper authorities handle it had been the right call. Spring came to Meadowbrook Heights with blooming dogwoods and HOA-approved flower beds. The neighborhood looked peaceful. Kids played in yards. People waved to each other in passing. The community Facebook group featured posts about lost cats and recommendations for plumbers, instead of legal threats and property disputes. I was in my garage one Saturday in May, performing routine maintenance on the generator, when a car I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. A young couple got out looking nervous. The woman was pregnant, maybe 7 months along. "Are you Greg Emerson?" the man asked. "That's me." "I'm David Chen. This is my wife Amy. We're Linda Chen's son and daughter-in-law. She told us what you do here with the medical depot." "Okay," I said, not sure where this was going. "We're moving to Richmond from California," Amy said. "David got a job at VCU. We've been looking at houses, and this neighborhood is perfect for what we need. But we saw the stories online about the HOA problems, and we wanted to talk to someone who lives here before we made an offer." I wiped my hands on a rag and invited them to sit on my porch. For the next half hour, I told them the full story of what had happened. I didn't sugarcoat it, but I also explained how much had changed since then. "So you'd recommend living here?" David asked. "Now? Yeah. Before Jerry took over as president, I'd have said run away, but the HOA is completely different now. They're reasonable. They follow their own procedures. They respect state law and homeowners' rights. Linda mentioned that you kind of revolutionized how the HOA operates here," Amy said. "I wouldn't say revolutionized. I just forced them to follow the law. But yeah, it's a much better place to live now." They bought a house 3 streets over from mine and moved in July. Amy had her baby in August, a healthy girl they named Sophie. Linda was over the moon to have her granddaughter nearby. Life settled into a comfortable routine. Work continued. The depot ran smoothly. The HOA stayed out of my way. I even served on a committee to review the community's emergency preparedness procedures and successfully argued for exemptions that would allow backup generators during power outages as long as they met certain noise standards. The anniversary of the generator theft came and went without fanfare. 2 years later, it was mostly forgotten except as a neighborhood legend. New residents who hadn't lived through it heard the story secondhand and could barely believe it had happened. The news articles were still online, occasionally resurfacing when someone wrote about HOA overreach, but in Meadowbrook Heights itself, it had become history. I ran into Patricia's husband at a gas station in Richmond one afternoon about 3 years after everything had ended. He recognized me before I placed him. He looked older, grayer, more worn down. "Mr. Emerson," he said quietly. "Hello," I replied, not sure what else to say. "I want you to know that Patricia understands what she did was wrong. The therapy and the probation have helped her see that she got caught up in having power and forgot why the HOA existed in the first place. I appreciate you telling me that. We're doing okay in Arizona, different life, simpler in some ways." He paused, looking like he wanted to say more. "She destroyed a lot with that one decision. Our savings, our reputation, our place in the community we'd lived in for 18 years. All because she couldn't admit she was wrong about a generator. I'm sorry it turned out that way," I said, and I meant it. I'd never wanted to destroy anyone's life. I just wanted my equipment back. You did what you had to do. I understand that now. I just wish she'd understood it before it got so far." He nodded to me and headed into the convenience store. I stood by my truck for a moment, thinking about how one bad decision could cascade into life-changing consequences. Patricia had probably confiscated dozens of things over the years, and nobody had pushed back hard enough to stop her. But she'd picked the wrong item and the wrong person, and everything had unraveled. The medical depot program expanded over the next few years. 3 other hospital employees set up similar operations in their homes in rural areas around Richmond County. The model I'd defended became the template for the whole system. The hospital even named an annual award after the program, the Satellite Services Excellence Award, given to employees who showed exceptional dedication to rural healthcare access. I won it the first year. The plaque hung in my garage, right above the generator that had started everything. Every time I looked at it, I remembered that sometimes standing your ground, documenting everything, and letting the legal system work was the most revolutionary thing you could do. Meadowbrook Heights thrived under new leadership. Property values increased. The community won awards for neighborhood excellence. The HOA operated transparently, with reasonable rules reasonably enforced. Jerry Walton served 3 terms as president before stepping down, leaving the association in the hands of a board that had learned from the mistakes of their predecessors. I still live there, still run the medical depot, still transport medications to rural clinics twice a week. The generator runs quietly when needed, properly registered and documented and completely legal. Nobody has tried to take it since that October night during Hurricane Melissa. Sometimes neighbors ask me about what happened, especially new residents who have heard rumors but want the real story. I keep it brief. The HOA president took something she shouldn't have, the hospital and county got involved, and the legal system worked the way it was supposed to. I don't dwell on the drama or the courtroom scenes or Patricia's arrest. Those were just steps in a process that resulted in the right outcome. The most important thing is that the medical depot kept running, patients kept getting their medications, and rural clinics kept receiving the support they needed. That was always what mattered most. The generator was never just a generator. It was a critical link in a healthcare chain that served vulnerable people who depended on consistency and reliability. On quiet evenings, I sit on my porch and watch the neighborhood. Kids ride bikes, people walk dogs. Someone's always mowing a lawn or washing a car or chatting with a neighbor. It's peaceful in a way it wasn't before, when everyone lived in mild fear of HOA enforcement and overnight violation notices. We learned something as a community. We learned that authority has limits, that rules need to serve people rather than control them, and that sometimes the right challenge at the right time can reshape everything for the better. My generator sits in my garage, ready when needed, a quiet guardian of medications and samples that save lives. It's just a machine, running on fuel and maintenance schedules. But it represents something bigger. The principle that you don't back down when you're doing the right thing, even when someone with a clipboard and a title tells you you're wrong. And in the end, that made all the difference.